You are listening to the Tricorder Transmissions, ep039. And now, here are Craig and Jeff.
Hello and welcome back to the Tricorder Transmissions. As always, we are your hosts, Craig Cohen.
And Jeff Hewlett.
And this week, Jeff, we are covering a great episode, Journey to Babel.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to this one for a while. This is a pretty universe-expanding episode.
Yeah, and I'm sure we'll talk about it more during the commentary, but this episode really feels different to me.
I agree with that. It's although it's kind of a bottle episode, being completely on the ship.
Yeah.
It still has a kind of a serious tone to it.
Yeah, and I think it's like you said, the whole universe expanding aspect of it. So, I mean, it really feels like nothing we've seen on Star Trek up until this point.
Yeah, I agree with that for sure. So let's, we could probably cover the whole episode now in the intro, but probably can it.
Sure. And we're also going to be doing a special supplemental log edition of this episode as well that will be up later in the week.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to that. I don't want to give away too much, but this is going to be a Tricorder Transmissions series first coming up with this extended.
Yeah, I know we have a lot of cool people lined up to join us.
Yeah, it's going to be great.
So we've talked about the convention coming up in Las Vegas in, I guess, the last weekend of July. And there's been a little bit of news this week. They added Carl Urban on Thursday, which is pretty neat. Of course, he played McCoy in the J.J. Abrams movies. And I think his McCoy was awesome.
No, I agree. I think that was one of the higher points of the J.J. Trek movies. I think most of the crew, I think, nailed their parts pretty well, but he did a really good McCoy impression, in my opinion.
Yeah, and the thing I liked about his performance is Carl Urban is a pretty physical guy. He's a pretty physical actor. He's done a lot of physical roles and, tough guy roles, and he played Judge Dredd. But for McCoy, he was able to sort of tone down that toughness, and not to say that McCoy was ever a wimp, but, he sort of played it differently than Carl Urban normally plays things, which was pretty cool.
It was kind of a little bit of a departure from what we've seen of him prior to the JJ movies, but it seemed like a natural fit for him.
So he'll be there on Thursday, which is pretty neat, and I'm sure his line will be huge, but hopefully he does some kind of Q&A as well, because it will be neat to hear his take on his Trek experiences.
Yeah, and hopefully nobody brings up the fact that his show just got canceled, that Almost Human show.
That was always, surprising for me. Anytime a big Hollywood, working Hollywood actor goes to the small screen, I know it's an easier schedule, but I'm sure he'll do all right.
Yeah, I guess we'll see where he goes from here.
And speaking of the convention, we are in the early stages of putting together what I think will be a really, really special episode, sort of devoted to a first-timers look at the Star Trek convention there in Vegas.
Yeah, we got a couple of people who are veterans of that convention lined up to come on and give their tips and tricks and advice to us and whoever else out there is planning to go to this convention in Vegas or is just interested in hearing about the convention in Vegas. I'm sure there's a lot of stuff that goes on out there that we haven't even thought of yet, and it'll be great to get some insider information on what to expect.
So that'll be going up, I think, sometime in early June. We're planning on posting that, so or sometime in June.
Yeah, I would think sometime, so we have, a good 6 to 8 weeks before the convention, which is coming at the end of July. So we'll give people plenty of time to soak up that info before they head out to Las Vegas.
Excellent.
So not much news on the Star Trek front this week. The only thing that caught my eye is Another original series era fan-based production called Starship Exeter has put out its second episode. Now, I don't know much about Starship Exeter in itself. I must confess I haven't watched much of it, but the cover of the, looks like a comic book, has a picture of the Gorn on it, so it kind of caught my eye.
Oh, wow. Very cool.
Yeah, so the Exeter is another, I guess, Constitution-class ship, kind of a sister to the Enterprise, if you will, that was wiped out in an episode that we have yet to cover, the Omega Glory. And this, I guess, covers some of the exploits of that crew of that ship prior to its destruction. So could be some interesting stuff out there for original series fans who are looking for a little bit more new content.
Excellent.
Yeah. So, good stuff.
Yeah.
That's about it for Star Trek news. I guess we can just dive right into our commentary on Journey to Babel, if you're ready.
Oh, sure thing.
All right. So, as always, run down some air dates for you guys out there. Original episode aired November 17th of 1967. Remaster February 3rd, 2007.
All right, and I have a quick write-up from the NBC press release that was released on October 19th, 1967. Jane Wyatt guest stars as Mr. Spock's Earthling mother in Journey to Babel, a drama in which murder and pursuit by an alien vessel plague the Enterprise as it transports ambassadors to a vital council meeting on NBC television network Star Trek Colorcast Friday, November 17th.
Always love the Colorcast.
Yes.
All right. Getting started with our commentary. Sync yourselves up and press play in 3, 2, 1.
There it is.
Yeah, well, that's the horizontal flyby. We didn't actually see the old diagonal coming from outer space into our view. They're already orbiting some kind of a planet. And look, we got dress uniforms already.
Yeah, and I realized that I've been making a slight mistake this season in that I've been so used to that other green shirt that Kirk was wearing that I think I referenced it as his dress uniform a couple times when that was not correct.
No, but it's weird. It's kind of a cross between a regular captain shirt and the dress shirt. It's the color of the dress shirt, but it's more of the design of the captain shirt because it's got the logo on it, but it's across the bottom instead. It's weird that he had 3 different shirts.
Yeah, and I think you had mentioned on an earlier episode that the green was probably to distinguish him from all the other gold shirts.
Yeah, more than likely. Now, I'm wondering to myself, watching this scene that we're watching now, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, is that 8 red shirts?
Yeah.
8 red shirts in one shot. Okay, they're going to go through the door here. Let's count.
Yeah, they're going to be lined up.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 red shirts. So we tied with Devil in the Dark for the most red shirts on screen at one time.
Yeah, and these all fare pretty well.
Yeah, none of them die, I don't think.
Yeah.
But you got the little guy at the end with that belt on. Like, it's weird looking.
Yeah. And here's a fun little moment between McCoy and Spock where McCoy asks how to do the Vulcan greeting. And I love the shot, the way that pushed in there.
Yeah, because you're wondering who this is coming in the background, coming out of that shuttlecraft with this kind of pomp and circumstance, big greeting with the showing of security. So it's an important person. But they haven't done the reveal yet, which I love the way they do this reveal.
Oh, it's great.
Of who Sarek is. So you're seeing a Vulcan, and we haven't seen a lot of other Vulcans yet. We've only seen the one in Mirror Mirror, right? We haven't seen other Vulcans really. Oh well, on the ship rather. We saw them on the surface of the planet Namuk time.
Yeah.
But this is the first time we've seen, in the regular what they call the Prime universe, another Vulcan, I guess of higher rank. Accompanied by a human.
Yeah, which is, the first indication that, these people might have a relation to Spock.
Yeah, but this is the funny part, is that Kirk offers up Spock to show them around the Enterprise because, hey, listen, this is a Vulcan. He's familiar to you guys. So you feel more at home with a Vulcan showing you around. And Sarek says, no, We'd rather you give us somebody else.
Yeah, and then Kirk's like, well, okay, cool, Spock, you can cut off and go down to Vulcan and go visit your parents.
Yeah, Kirk's going to cut him loose. So interestingly enough, we've seen that there are 114 delegates on the ship so far. That's a lot of delegates, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I thought it was kind of strange that they were in orbit and they didn't transport people up. They actually used the shuttlecraft to fly the ambassadors up to the Enterprise.
Yeah, I was almost thinking if maybe with proceedings like this, the shuttle technology is considered too risky.
Yeah, who knows? I mean, it really strange choices. I guess we can't really put too much thought into why they decided to do one thing over the other. Probably because the entrance was more
grand,
majestic and grand coming out of the shuttlecraft, huh? So I guess we should also talk about the fact that they are actually Spock's parents.
Oh, yeah,
Since
yeah.
that passed by a minute ago. We should probably mention the fact that we found out that Sarek and his human counterpart that came with him, who was his wife, are actually Spock's Vulcan father and human mother.
Yeah, we get that like Scooby-Doo moment before we go to the opening titles. That
Yeah, good one. And, I want to point out, and I'm sure you have more information on this as we talk through it, that this episode was written by the iconic DC Fontana.
Yeah.
And I think this may be one of her best writing efforts in the original series.
Oh, so far, definitely.
Yeah, so this is another one of those bottle episodes, I guess. It's going to take place all on the Enterprise, but a lot of really interesting things happen in this episode, and you get a ton of character development.
Yeah, yeah. And we have this moment here where Spock's mother, Amanda, is still amazed after all these years that her son, even with a human side, hasn't really let that part of himself through.
Yeah, and this is one of those things I was wondering a lot about, is that, a rift between a father and son seems to be something that, humans would have trouble with. But why would Vulcans, who are unemotional and logical, have these rifts between them, which seem to be based in emotion? So Spock's father, we're finding out now, actually,
yeah,
is kind of PO'd at Spock because he forsook the Vulcan Science Academy and instead went into Starfleet. But, as a logical and unemotional being, why would he choose not to have any kind of a relationship with Spock based solely on an emotional disappointment?
Well, yeah, I mean, it could also be seen as that going to Starfleet instead of the Vulcan Science Academy wasn't a logical choice.
No, but still, it would be an emotional choice to cut off your son, right? Mm-hmm. Not a logical one. It just seems like a strange thing in my mind that, Spock and his father would choose not to have any kind of a relationship solely based on the fact that Spock opted for Starfleet as opposed to the Vulcan Science Academy. Seems kind of strange to me. I guess we really can't belabor that.
Yeah, and Amanda even tries to explain it to Spock here, to Kirk here.
Yeah, which is, I like how Kirk and Amanda have a little bit of a connection.
Yeah.
A little human connection. So Kirk is kind of questioning, the disagreement between Spock and his father, and Amanda is sort of trying to justify it by saying, that's how Vulcans are, and it's the Vulcan way, and this, that, and the other thing. This episode, I think, is great for illustrating the Vulcan way, quote unquote. Yeah. You're actually witnessing it firsthand, not just from Spock, but you're seeing another Vulcan who is sort of co-signing, if you will, on the way that Vulcans are.
Yeah.
So very cool. Very cool. And a little acknowledgement here between a little smile from Kirk to Amanda as the situation kind of boils down a little bit, and Kirk has to This is a really cool effect, by the way. I love the fact that Uhura appears on this little tiny monitor.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
That's pretty awesome. Yeah. So we're finding out that there is some signal coming from somewhere near the Enterprise, but Uhura can't pinpoint it. So this kind of leads into what's going on in the rest of the episode.
And here we go.
Yeah, so these little guys here, you got these little guys who are kind of painted gold. We're going to go a little more into this in our extended episode. So we're seeing some alien races that we've never seen before.
Yeah.
And we're not quite sure what to make of them because they're really unidentified in this episode.
Yeah.
The only ones you really hear about by name are the Andorians and
the Tellarites.
The Tellarites, right. So we haven't seen them quite yet. We're about to see the Tellarites now and the Andorians, but there's two other races that appear in this that don't seem to get named. And I guess we can talk more about them when we get together with our guests for our extended episode.
Yeah. And I like how Sarek here gave the exact age when somebody said he was over 102 years
102 years old. So that gives our audience a bit of a perspective on how old Vulcans can get. And we know that Sarek continues to appear into the Star Trek movies.
Yeah.
The original series movies. And didn't he appear on The Next Generation at some point?
Yeah, I think he appeared on one or two episodes of The Next Generation, and he died back in 96 at the age of 72. But assuming he had lived, I'm sure he would have popped up on more programming somehow.
You would think.
So here we have the Tellarites.
Yep. And there's an Andorian there.
Yeah.
So there's a Tellarite and there's an Andorian. They kind of cut back and forth between the two.
Yeah. The Tellarite, you know who they remind me of?
The Gamorrean guards from Star Wars.
Well, another Star Wars connection for me is the guy that's in the cantina that says, my friend doesn't like you and I don't like you either.
Right.
That guy had kind of like a pig nose thing going on.
Good catch. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I forgot about that guy.
Yeah. So I don't know. Somebody at Lucasfilm probably dug that character or that alien design and threw it into a couple of different species in the Star Wars universe.
Yeah, really. So that's a topic that I think we're going to need to expand on a bit when we sit down for the extended version of this. So the influence of these aliens on the Star Wars series.
Yeah. So we basically had a moment there where the Tellarite wanted to get Sarek's opinion, or he wanted to know how Sarek was going to vote.
Right. So a little bit of background on this for anybody who's not watching along. These ambassadors are coming on board the Enterprise to go to a summit of sorts to vote on a planet called Caridian, which wants to be part of the Federation. And it seems that there is a strong opposition to that planet and that culture and that race coming on to the Federation. So it seems that the Tellarites are very vehemently against it. And they're trying to figure out how Ambassador Sarek of the Vulcan Society is going to vote on the admission of Coridan into the Federation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here we have a non-wigged Chekhov.
Yep, Chekhov's got his regular hair, and we're seeing and another person in the Sulu position, I guess. So Sulu is still off
filming
shooting the Green Berets, huh?
Yeah.
All right. And funny how Kirk and Spock are in their dress uniforms, but nobody else on the bridge is, huh?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah. You know, one thing that's really cool that we kind of missed during that exchange in that leisure room was that Kirk kind of jumps in with his diplomatic skills and intervenes between the Tellarite delegate and Sarek to calm the situation down when it seems that the Tellarite is about to kind of rise up and get a little nasty.
Yeah.
With Sarek. So I think it's a pretty cool Kirk moment that, you know, Kirk didn't respond with, physical. He didn't call security. He was able to be a diplomat and smooth the situation out with his words as opposed to violence or physical altercation.
Mm-hmm.
So pretty cool. Pretty cool.
Yeah. And here's Sarek having a conversation with Amanda where he almost starts to explain away, you know, the whole point you were making where you said, why is he holding a grudge? And he says here that he doesn't, you know, begrudge any, you know, he doesn't hold any hard feelings against Starfleet. So this almost lends more weight to your argument that Sarek is acting very out of character for a Vulcan. Yeah,
it's interesting that he seems concerned about Spock getting the respect he deserves due to his position in Starfleet. Now, this particular moment here, I thought is very interesting that we've seen the Vulcan salute, but we're seeing a different hand gesture type contact between Sarek and his wife. We've seen it already, but it's where, you know, they extend the index and middle finger of each of their hands and touch them together.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming that's some sort of an expression of love or caring.
For
the other one. Yeah. And as a topic for further discussion, we see that again in a more expanded format in Star Trek III: The Search for Spock, as Saavik attempts to calm the ponfar of the young Spock who is growing up really quickly with this ritualistic rubbing of these fingers together.
Oh, right.
Yeah, so, you know, not to talk through that whole thing now because it's not really connected to this episode particularly, but something we should bring up in the future. So we're seeing an unknown ship too, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and the ship is traveling at warp 10.
That's crazy. That's outside of Starfleet's ability.
Yeah, and it's not an authorized Starfleet vehicle. We don't know exactly what the ship is. We just know that it's small and it's much faster than the Enterprise at this point.
Yeah.
So we're getting a couple of bits of tension so far with we see there's some tension between these delegates of different races and planets. So the Tellarite is angry with the Vulcans because he can't get the vote ahead of time. And the Andorians were kind of hanging back a little bit. So we don't know much about them yet. But another confrontation here between Sarek and the Tellarite.
Yeah. And Sarek pretty much spells out why, voting, I guess, yay, is the way to go here.
Yeah, because, and here we're hearing about dilithium crystals again. So this Coridan planet has a seemingly endless supply of dilithium crystals, which we find is, I guess, an endless supply of riches.
Yeah.
Because everybody and their mother wants these dilithium crystals to power their starships, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I guess that's why it's so contentious. But you would wonder why the Tellarites wouldn't want that as a part of Starfleet, right?
It sounds like it would kind of impact, maybe any kind of, deals they have going on right now.
Yeah, I guess so.
It's kind of unregulated, wild, wild west, and I'd imagine like the time any government gets involved in something, becomes a little harder to navigate.
True. Uh-oh. And looks like he got what was coming to him.
Yeah.
So our Tellarite ambassador has been killed. And he's been stuffed into a Jeffries tube.
Yeah.
Oh, man. That's great. They kind of just shoved him upside down. And it looks like his neck was broken.
Yeah.
That was the cause of death. And good commercial fade out there. Now we've got Bones examining this Tellarite, and Bones is going to say that whoever did this was an expert at breaking necks. And the killer knew exactly where to apply the pressure to snap the neck instantly.
Yeah, and almost with a very similar to a move that the Vulcans do.
Yeah, Spock is pretty much going to sell out the fact that it was probably a Vulcan that did this, and it's a method called Tal Shaya.
Not to be confused with Talia Shire from the Rocky films.
Right, exactly. The two completely different things, but I bet you Talia Shire could probably break your neck too.
It was interesting that it was described by Spock as a merciful form of execution.
Yeah, it's an instant neck break, which I guess kills you instantly, right? No pain.
Yeah. And
Spock says the only person on the ship that would be able to do it would be, I guess, him and his father. And Spock here is going to sell out his dad by saying if there was a reason for him to do it, his father would be capable of killing.
Yeah.
So interesting. Interesting that Spock, I guess that kind of speaks to his Vulcan nature, that he would be able to just speak freely about his father possibly being involved in this murder without the emotional reaction of trying to defend his father and dissuade any suspicion.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So now we see the Trinity going to look for Sarek. And now they found him. He's in his quarters. And Sarek's reaction to this is great. Sarek just kind of like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
It looks like Tal Shai. All right, well, hey.
Yeah, and conveniently he was by himself meditating.
Right.
And he explains that Spock will sort of co-sign this, that it's the Vulcan meditation is a very personal experience that I guess Vulcans aren't really comfortable sharing with non-Vulcans.
Yes, we're getting more hints about the secret nature of some of the Vulcan rituals that we heard about it in Amok Time for the first time. So we heard about Pon farr and that the ritual on Vulcan where Spock is I guess fighting for his bride, and now we're hearing about another one, and it looks like Sarek is having some sort of medical problem here.
Yeah, I mean, right now Sarek is really delivering every play in the "I have to be guilty" book.
Yeah,
he's got a flimsy excuse with no real alibi, and then he passes out or faints to sort of delay questioning.
Yes, and McCoy diagnoses him with some sort of cardiovascular problem, so he's got heart trouble, for the layman's. And now this is an interesting exchange between Kirk and Spock. So Kirk is assuming that Spock would have some sort of an emotional reaction to his father's heart problem, and Spock is just playing it off.
Yeah.
Not worried about him at all. Worry is a human emotion. Yep, he accepts what's happened.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, that's not a bad way to look at things. It's just you have to find the balance there.
Yeah, exactly. So Spock's reaction may seem very cold to us as humans, but I know that I share some of that way of looking at things. I don't necessarily look at things as cut and dry as Spock does, but tempering your emotional reactions with a bit of reality, it tends to help to keep you grounded.
Oh yeah,
I think.
So now we're getting, I guess Spock and Kirk are trying to figure out who this alien vessel belongs to, and they're also now tracking transmissions that are coming from within the ship. Somebody's communicating with that vessel.
Yeah, and I love that Kirk was able to point out an error that Uhura was making. So I guess that means he knows the communication console better than Uhura does.
Yeah. I mean, and he really schools her.
He does. It's kind of strange to me how they do that in Star Trek so much, is that, Kirk and Spock are kind of supermen.
Yeah.
In a way. They know every system on the ship. Spock second guesses Scotty on engineering things, and here's Kirk second guessing Uhura on the communication systems. And
yeah,
it's funny that they paint those two characters as kind of the ultimate Starfleet officers, if you will.
Yeah. Well, the one thing I sort of took away from that scene is possibly that Kirk as captain has the ability to really stay focused, whereas the confusion of what was going on might have thrown Uhura off her game a little bit.
Yep.
And that's something that sort of comes with the experience that, Kirk probably has as captain.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Now we've been transported into the medical bay, and I wanted to ask you something, and I know you wouldn't bring this up, but I will because I guess I'm that guy. But I think this episode really illustrates how risque these female uniforms could be.
Oh, God, yeah.
You really noticed some bottom biscuits on Nurse Chapel there, right?
You got a full cheek.
Yeah, I couldn't believe, wait a minute. This was the late 60s, and I'm seeing, partial butt hanging out from underneath this outfit?
Yeah, I was pretty surprised by that as well. I think it was the most revealing that they've been, and I don't know if that was accidental or somehow got past standards and practice.
Yeah, almost seemed like an ill-fitting uniform.
Yeah,
strange. Strange. But anyway, on to the actual problems here. So I guess it looks that Spock has the same blood type as his father, and his father needs a massive transfusion, right?
Yeah. And McCoy's worried the whole time because, the Vulcan physiology is still pretty foreign to him.
Yeah, so he has to do some sort of a major operation and they're on Sarek, and there's not enough Vulcan plasma that's compatible with Sarek's blood type on board the Enterprise. And Spock seems to be the only potential donor.
Yeah. But even with the same blood type, it's argued that, and Nurse Chapel brings it up, that, the human elements of Spock's blood could be problematic.
Yes, absolutely. And the
preference is that you could filter them out, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting. And, we find out that Sarek's blood type is T negative, which is, quote unquote, a rare blood type. And Spock, of course, seems to have the same exact blood type, but it is also intermixed with some human DNA, so further complicating the matter at hand. So very, very tense. There's a lot going on in this episode for tension building. So we got this. We've got the friction between the delegates. We've got the other ship, flying around the Enterprise. We don't know what its intentions are. And we've got Spock's father seemingly dying. So
and it's funny because... Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say it's funny because normally you have a problem with the ship itself. And in this episode, there's enough other stuff going on that they don't need to have a problem with the Enterprise.
No, right. And we're going to introduce another piece of tension here with Spock's mother objecting to, Spock's choice.
Yeah.
So we're going to see another circumstance come up here soon. But right now we're talking about a potential drug that could bolster the plasma production in Spock's body up to a level where Spock could survive the removal of a huge quantity of his own blood, enough to save his father's life, right?
Yeah.
And interestingly enough, this drug has worked on Rigelian people.
Yeah.
Which is this the first time we've heard people, the Rigelians, mentioned? I mean, we've heard Rigel before, but I don't know if we've ever heard that there was a race there called the Rigelian people.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'd have to go back and look.
And they say their Rigelian physiology is similar to Vulcans.
Yeah. Which was interesting because you'd think if they were going to go down that route, they would have, talked about Romulans.
Right, exactly. You would think they'd have some sort of a way to maybe pull some of this blood from possibly a Romulan. But another note about this experimental drug that they're talking about using is, and I thought this was kind of amusing, is that McCoy says the drug puts a strain on the spleen and the liver.
Yeah.
So the liver I can understand, but the spleen? Isn't the spleen typically an organ that is regarded as useless or can be removed without any sort of ill effect?
Yeah, but maybe in the 23rd century, it's developed some kind of practical use.
Oh yeah, that's a good idea. That's a good one. I didn't think about that. Or maybe the Vulcan spleen is more useful. Oh, what a cut! What a cut!
Yeah, I mean, this was one of those things where you almost have to check and make sure that your playback device didn't skip.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking. I mean, you're in a dialogue-heavy scene. Spock exits sick bay, and all of a sudden, we're in the middle of an already in progress fight scene. What was that move that Kirk just did?
Yeah, it was like a drop kick, but he used the force of drop kicking the wall to sort of deliver like all of his body weight onto the Andorian.
Yeah, and Kirk in the process got stabbed in the back.
Yeah, and we get some really, really red blood.
Yeah, Kirk, he really took a good stab there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then we're going to find out here that he's really in bad shape. And he managed to subdue the Andorian attacker, but in the process, he's taken a heavy amount of damage to his body.
Yeah, and the one thing I kind of like about this episode, with the exception of the rogue Andorian, which we'll later learn isn't even an Andorian, is that all of the alien races on this ship, none of them are really the villain.
No.
You know, which I think is really kind of cool. Whereas, you know, you normally have you know, if you're going to have a villain on an episode, it's going to be an alien race. And here, I mean, we have the unknown threat, and we never really learn who they are. Or do we?
Well, we do. We learn who they are, but we don't really know. You kind of have to do some Star Trek mathematics to understand who these people are, because the last time I don't want to go over it yet, because we're going to learn about it later on in the episode. But
all right, we'll park that
then.
for now.
We'll park it and bring it back at the end when we find out who they are.
Yeah.
But
to get to my point is, I think it's really cool to sort of see. This is really the first time we really get to see that the United Federation of Planets is really, really how it works and how it functions.
Yeah. Well, up until now, we thought it was humans and Vulcans, right?
Yeah.
And now we're learning that it's bigger than that. So there are at least 4 other alien races involved in the United Federation of Planets. 2 we know the names of, the Tellarites and the Andorians, and there's 2 that we saw in that ready room or that break room, whatever they were in, that we don't know the names of yet.
Yeah.
So it looks, the universe is growing here in this episode, and now we're finally getting some interesting dialogue between Spock and an Andorian.
Yeah, and this is like kind of this is really the prototypical Andorian here. I mean, this guy really set the template, if you will, for all the Andorians moving forward. And I don't even mean with the blue skin and the white hair and the antenna, but I mean just the overall structure, I guess, of his face, the way he talks, and that's actor Reggie Nalder, who died at the age of in 91 at the age of 86. Might remember Salem's Lot in 79,
all right.
The Manchurian Candidate in 62, and Dario Argento's The Bird with the Crystal Plumage in 1969.
Very cool. So this is cool because we're seeing the stage being set for future Andorians.
Yeah.
And, we're going to see, and we're not going to see too many Andorians in the original series, but we'll see them in other series in the future.
Yeah, and it's funny how that happens, how as they were building other series, they went back and they sort of mined the concepts that maybe weren't as developed as they could have been on the original series.
Yeah, dare I mention the Gorn? I had to put it in there, sorry. Had to put it in there. So, you're going to see, we're seeing now an exchange between Spock and his mother, in which this is very, very defining, I think, for Spock. Spock is choosing his duty to Starfleet and the Enterprise over saving his father's life.
Yeah. And from Spock's point of view, it's he's making the right call here. Kirk's not fit to lead right now.
No.
And Spock cannot leave the ship in Scotty's command, and that's no slight on Scotty. It's just Spock saying, for me to abandon my post in such a critical time is irresponsible and could really result in probably some serious consequences on the Starfleet end of things.
Oh, absolutely. And I think if this were a human in this role, it may play out much, much differently, which I think kind of sheds some light on the advantage of having a Vulcan first officer.
Yeah.
To balance out that the emotional human reactions to these situations, where when he's left in command, we saw earlier in another episode that, pure logic doesn't always work in a command scenario. But we're seeing in this episode that Spock's logic is able to keep him on a path that will hopefully ensure the safety of the Enterprise instead of compromising it.
Yeah. And I like how Spock sort of points out the common ground that him and his dad have, where he says, if I made the decision you want me to make, Sarek would be pretty upset.
Yeah, exactly. So we're learning the commonality between the Vulcan people. So, Spock is leveraging the tradition and the behavior of Vulcan people to support his own position in defense of himself against his human mother, who's trying to appeal to his human side that she knows is in there.
Yeah, and she's doing a pretty good job. I mean, Nimoy's showing some, something below the surface that's there and is almost wanting to come out.
Yeah, and I think that if you were to look at the original series as a whole and try to rank the performances by Leonard Nimoy as Mr. Spock, I think this episode ranks very, very high on the scale, as we're seeing that conflict between the human side and the Vulcan side played out really, really well in front of our eyes, and so much that it's palpable. I mean, the audience can feel the inner conflict within Spock as he's, walking after his mother as the door is closed and he puts his hand up against the door. I mean, he can feel the emotional pain that his mother is in, yet the Vulcan side of him, is taking over.
Yeah.
And keeping him duty bound, right?
Yeah. And here's where Kirk sort of does he really goes above and beyond here, in the sense that, he learns of, Spock's reluctance to step down or step aside, for this procedure. And Spock's, and Kirk says, I can't let him commit patricide. I can't let him kill his father, or, lead to the death of his father. So even though Kirk's in no condition to command, he's gonna suck it up and fake his way through this for to trick Spock, who isn't an easy guy to trick.
No, exactly. And we also, before we move on to the scene going on now, we also learn in this episode that all fabrics in the future are sparkly. Even bandages,
yes,
are sparkly. So now Kirk is doing a really good job here, like you said, of selling the fact that he's okay.
Yeah.
To Spock. And look at Spock's like, oh, well, I guess if you say you're okay, all right, I'll relinquish my command.
Yeah.
And you'd think that Kirk would stumble, climbing up into the chair there, but he's really holding back on the pain, and he waits until Spock is gone to show any physical symptoms.
Yeah.
And now we're seeing it.
Yeah, and that's another sort of instance where, Shatner really gets underrated as an actor.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I agree with you completely. So he really does a great job of shifting gears mid scene. You didn't get a break. You didn't get a cut. It was all the same shot, and he changed moods completely and physical conditions completely. Yeah. Oh, by the way, before we move on, we're seeing green blood here.
Yeah.
In the exchange between Spock and Sarek in the operating room. So pretty cool. You saw the green blood drain into the cables that connect the two of them together. So we're seeing the transfusion live. And I know we've seen green blood once before, but here is another instance where we see that continuity taking place.
Yeah.
Which is cool. So we're seeing McCoy doing some sort of an operation to Sarek. We don't know exactly what he's doing at this point.
Yeah, is it, I guess, the 23rd century version of open heart surgery?
Yeah, it looks that way. And Spock has something apparently very important to say about the identity of that alien ship, yet McCoy decides to have him knocked out instead of getting that crucial, all-important information.
Yeah, Spock had made some connections, and now we find out that the antenna in this Andorian was a fake, and that's how he's been transmitting to the enemy vessel.
Yeah, and I love the fact that the red shirt security guy has to exaggerate the arrangement and the picking up of the antenna and that other that little chip or whatever falls out of it, so that the audience can put two and two together.
Yeah, and I got to say that this ship really sort of does a Davy versus Goliath type of job here. I mean, this little ship really gives the Enterprise a run for its money.
Yeah, and it's a strange concept to me that the speed of the ship is so fast that the Enterprise can't lock on or hit it. So I guess we're supposed to understand that the Enterprise has a certain threshold of speed with which it can respond to, right? Strange to me.
Yeah.
This is the first time I guess we've heard that something could be too fast for the Enterprise to take out. So look at it. Shatner's selling it still, too. Look at it, holding onto his arm there as if he's in serious pain.
Yeah, and McCoy's really being tested here as well. This is really one of those classic ticking time bombs on Star Trek.
Yeah, so McCoy is doing open heart surgery while the ship is being bombarded with phasers and getting rocked all over the place.
And at one point he references if they take another hit like that, it'll do have an adverse effect on his ability.
Yeah, it'll take both Spock and Sarek out.
Yeah.
So a lot at stake at this point. We're seeing a lot. We're back in sickbay and we're watching the patients rumbling around on the tables. Look at the little smoke coming out there. You see that?
Yeah.
So smoke coming out of Sarek.
Yeah, or was it the big apparatus that's on him?
I don't know. Maybe McCoy was in there with a soldering iron. Maybe Vulcans are computers.
Yeah, because now Chapel's got to get the portable version.
The portable old, quote unquote, the old cardio stimulator.
Yeah.
Which is still far more advanced than the technology we have today. But they still have spray bottles on the table in the back there. Some technology never dies, apparently.
Yeah. So the Enterprise's systems are getting very, very strained here.
Yeah, the shields are getting weak. And this is another thing that I wondered about, and I don't know if we can solve this today, or maybe we should rely on our listeners to give us some feedback on this. So the shields get weak, and Kirk has to order that auxiliary power be used to bolster the shields. Why isn't that automatic?
Yeah.
Wouldn't you think with this technology, the ship would say, okay, number 4 shield is weak. Let's substitute with some auxiliary power to bolster that shield. It just seems strange that he has to actually say that's what should be done.
Yeah. And we don't see Scotty at all in this episode.
Nope. no Scotty, no Sulu.
Yeah.
So, once again, we're missing some crew members here. Scotty gets referenced in the episode, but he doesn't actually appear, nor is he heard. And I love the fact that we're conscious enough of our continuity that the Andorian still has one antenna left, this false Andorian.
Yeah. And this is great here because you've got this false Andorian who thinks that they've, pretty much won here, and victory is just a foregone conclusion. And it's great to watch as Kirk basically outmaneuvers this more powerful foe, which it's one of the great Kirk space encounter moments.
Oh, absolutely. And I love how he stages the power cutting on the Enterprise. So he says, cut the power on one side of the ship first.
Yeah.
And then wait a few minutes and then cut power on the other side to make it look like the ship died, in a sequential manner, not just all at once.
Yeah.
And Chekhov says, the ship is starting to drift. And Kirk says, okay, let it drift.
It's basically a rope-a-dope.
Yeah, we got to sell this to these aliens, and it's working.
Yeah.
So awesome combat prowess. And we got to remember that Kirk is in a lot of pain here.
Yeah.
He's been stabbed no less than, an hour or two ago?
Yeah, yeah.
And he's still got enough wherewithal within him to put up this ruse to trick these aliens into falling into his trap. And look at the concern on the fake Andorian's face here.
Yeah, he's really concerned, and we'll learn that it doesn't really matter what happens here because his fate was already sealed.
Oh yeah.
But it seems like he was really, really affected by the loss of I guess his
people, I guess.
Yeah, his colleagues.
So, fascinating though. The poor guy. He's rethinking what he's been doing here.
Yeah, yeah.
On the Enterprise.
He's basically given his life for a cause, and that cause turned out to be worthless.
Yeah, pretty much.
And here we learn it was a suicide mission.
The ship was never meant to get back home. So whoever was on that ship was resolved to the fact that they were going to die regardless. So they were going to die for their cause.
One-way ticket.
Yeah, man. That's a tough one.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's any cause that I would be so resigned to that I'd be willing to give my life for it. Maybe, in defense of a family member or a really good friend, but as far as a cause is concerned, that's a lot to ask.
Oh, sure. And this guy, he found a cause he could get behind. He's administered a slow poison.
Yeah, convenient timing.
Yeah, and he thought he had about 10 minutes left, and a little bit of comedy here. I seem to have miscalculated, which is kind of funny.
Oh, and it's so convenient that it just happens to happen right after the ship blows up.
Yeah.
But so Kirk is, once again, he's selling it here by holding onto his arm. And he gives the bridge to Chekhov.
Yeah. Awesome Chekhov moment there.
Yeah, that's something.
Chekhov doesn't go in the captain's chair, though.
No, he stays at the console. And Kirk goes right back to sickbay to find out how Spock and Sarek are.
Yeah, so now this is post-surgery.
Yep. And everything appears to be okay. Yeah. Spock and Sarek, of course, have made it through. So we haven't lost Mr. Spock, nor have we lost his father. And McCoy is kind of accrediting it to the Vulcan toughness that they pulled through. So pretty cool stuff. Mm-hmm. And Spock is going to reveal that the aliens were, in fact, Orions.
Yes.
And we know that the Orions are the green chicks, right? But I don't think we've seen them at all, aside from the cage, right? We haven't actually seen an Orion yet.
Yeah. Now, are the green girls, are they actually Orions? Or, I mean, they're Orion slave girls, so...
No, I think they're actually Orions.
Yeah.
They are Orions, but we haven't seen a male Orion.
Yeah.
So, interesting that they use the Orion name.
Yeah, I didn't even make that connection until just now.
Yeah. So I don't know. We don't see an Orion until I think season 3, right? I think there's that episode in season 3 where Kirk is in that prison or that mental institution, prison colony thing, and we see an Orion girl in there.
Yeah.
The
we'll
quote-unquote green chick.
We'll have to keep our eyes out.
Yeah, we'll point that out when we get there. So.
And this is great here because Amanda's like, Sarek, don't you think you should thank Spock for saving you? And he basically says, why should I thank him? He did the logical thing.
Yeah, and both of them are kind of talking around his mother.
Yeah.
Interesting little comedic ending here. Now here's something that I wanted to point out, and I'm definitely going to bring this up again when we do our extended episodes. Now, this is one of only 2 moments in the original series where it is said, some people think, I don't necessarily agree, that the fourth wall gets broken down. Now, McCoy is going to look into the camera, quote unquote, and say something directly to the audience. Now, I don't necessarily think he does that, but here we go in a minute here. I'm not sure if this is a fourth wall break. You tell me what you think. Here it is.
Yeah, I think he's looking past, almost maybe towards Nurse Chapel.
I think so too.
And that might have just been the way the scene was blocked.
Yeah, I don't think that was meant necessarily as a fourth wall break.
Yeah, he's not making complete eye contact with us.
No, and so the other fourth wall break, and we failed to mention it when it actually happened, was when Uhura was being retrained after losing her memory in the Changeling, and she looks Bluey at the audience and says, Bluey. But I think she was looking at Nurse Chapel, who was in the doorway behind the camera.
Yeah, probably another a case of blocking that, sells the idea that it's a fourth wall being broken.
Yeah, I really don't. I don't think that either one of those necessarily qualify as fourth wall breaks. But so here we are, the end of another episode.
And I think pretty much every episode that we've done a supplemental on has been an essential episode.
Yeah, and I think we've really telegraphed our votes all through this episode of how it was going to play out. And I don't necessarily think that there should be any doubt out there as to the fact that we're both going to vote essential on this episode and the reasons why.
Yeah, so I guess we just run through them. We've got the introduction of Spock's parents.
Yep, we've got the Andorians.
Yeah. So it's a new alien race. 2
new alien races.
Yeah, we get a little bit of an idea of how big Starfleet is and sort of, or the United Federation of Planets is and how it sort of functions.
Yep, the mention of the Orions, rather.
Yeah.
So the universe in Trek just got a heck of a lot bigger.
Yeah.
So I think that all of that stuff rolled up together with the character moments for Spock, Kirk, and McCoy. I think all of that kind of rolls into a big essential for me.
Yeah, same here. And I'm sure we'll have a lot more detail during our supplemental episode that will definitely help sell the importance of this episode in terms of Star Trek, the original series history.
Yeah, absolutely. So keep your eye out on the Wednesday following this episode's release for our extended discussion release. As always, we've done that many times in the past. And as always, you can hook up with us on Facebook at facebook.com/Tricorder Transmissions, TTT_pod at on Twitter, and our own website at thetricordertransmissions.com.
Excellent.
Yeah, so feel free to catch up with us online, and we'll see you for the extended episode in a few days. Thanks for listening.
Well, it was called Journey to Babel, and I was a false Andorian. They introduced the idea of the Andorian in the storyline.
Find your own answers, Captain.
Well, I literally arrived, I think, at 5:30 or 5:45 in the morning. And I was told the makeup would take a little time. And they put on like a matte finish for an actor. And then the hair, the antennae, and so on and so forth. It took, I think, almost 2 hours. So it was laborious, but I didn't mind.
My people are a violent race, but we had no quarrel with Captain Kirk.
Paul something or other, I can't think of his name now. He was a very gifted stunt guy. He did the actual fight. I had a couple of body movements, in a sense, with Shatner. All I could think of as we were doing it was, I'm fighting with a great classical actor. I had known of Shatner in Canada and the fact that he was brought to Hollywood to play in The Brothers Karamazov. So I was, in a sense, in awe of him, too. And he was, of course, superb as Captain Kirk. We all know that.
Mark Leonard, who portrays Sarek, Spock's father in this episode, has previously played the Romulan commander in Balance of Terror. And Amanda, Spock's mother, is played by veteran actress Jane Wyatt. You may recognize her as yet again another television mother in her role as Margaret Anderson in Father Knows Best. The roles of Sarek and Amanda struck a deep chord in the Star Trek audience, as lore would have it. Leonard reprised his fatherly role as in Star Trek's 3, 4, and 6, and Wyatt returned to her role of Amanda in Star Trek 4.